Probably. Anyways,
Double C.
I don't know her. So much so that I don't even know.
Oh, my highlights are gone, but I got
Oh, your highlights are gone? Yeah, see, that's
my notes are there, though.
not worth it.
Cool, awesome, yeah, that's great.
Is there a reason I have multiples in my binder?
I just undid everything that I did and then just published it, taking the stuff out, so.
For some
it's the
reason,
same.
whatever that refreshes.
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the agenda review for this, the 16th day of January 2014. Roll call, please.
Yes. Okay. Commissioner Dollison,
Here.
Commissioner Dantzler,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Yates,
Here.
and Mayor Birdsong.
Here. All right, we will have an invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Then we'll have the presentations. We're going to do the new website overview tonight, or are we going to?
We do that Mondays.
Monday, all right. The Transportation Master Plan, I see that's for tonight. Oh, MJ is up.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is, and Commissioners, this is somewhat of an update to keep you abreast of the multitude of different things we have going on with respect to transportation planning, both short-range and long-range planning, and kind of revisiting some of what we've done traditionally. This should take about 10 minutes, I'm assuming.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. Like T. Michael said, I just wanted to give you a kind of an update on transportation management and what we've been working on over the last couple of years. So just kind of first off, I wanted to highlight some ongoing initiatives. So these are things we've been doing for years, we continue to do, but sometimes they're not always at the forefront. So just wanted to kind of make sure those are on your radar.
Is it clicking?
Does this work? Yeah, thanks. We're monitoring and retiming traffic signals through our ATMS system. So that is our advanced traffic management system. We are tied into the FDOT's network with that. So we have the ability to adjust timings based on traffic flow. We also have the ability to, if there's an accident, we can manage the signals to reroute traffic around that accident. And a lot of that happens through a DOT, kind of like a call center, essentially. Okay. Analysis of new development transportation impacts. So every site plan that comes through the site plan review process undergoes a transportation analysis to determine what the impacts on our roadway networks will be. Ongoing roadway rehabilitation, intersection improvements, much like what's happening at Highway 17 and Cypress Gardens Boulevard and First Street and Cypress Gardens Boulevard. Improving pedestrian infrastructure, so filling sidewalk gaps, making repairs to existing sidewalk, and then filling some really big gaps through some of our complete street projects. Partnering with public transit agencies, we partner with the Citrus Connection. I believe they're scheduled to come in a month or two to come and give you guys an update on some of the things they're working on. And then the big complete street projects that we do with the Florida Department of Transportation. I think you approved a LAP agreement at the last meeting for one of those projects, but that's resulted in about $5 million in investment in pedestrian and roadway infrastructure from the DOT with federal dollars in the last few years. So those are very significant. All right, so in 2022, we really started to step back and said, how can we be more proactive with managing traffic in our community as we continue to grow? So we really ramped up our traffic management program, and we'll talk about what that looks like. 2023, we took that program, conducted a lot of analysis, and started implementing some of the things that we found. And in 2024, we're looking to do some master planning and continue implementing some of the initiatives we started in 23. And then 2025, we would hope to be implementing some of the recommendations in the 2024 master plan. And implementing those may mean just starting to figure out how we fund them, beginning design work. That might not necessarily be, turning dirt. So in 2022, we laid out a three-pronged approach to transportation management. So purchased a tool called Streetlight Data, and I think some of you have seen us present this before, but that is a tool that uses location-based data within your vehicles or cell phones and gives us engineering-grade transportation data that we can use to understand our network. We hired a consultant to support an analysis using that streetlight data. And then we hired Kimley Horn as their traffic and planning engineering expertise as an extension of staff. I saw William Roll here with us tonight from their team. William's kind of our quarterback with Kimley Horn. William has exceptional expertise, but when we hit those things that require like super niche expertise, he will go and bring in a safety person from their team, other people with specific transportation expertise. But that's been a very productive relationship, which you'll see here shortly. So we formed an internal transportation management team, so that is really made up of folks from economic opportunity and community investment, public works, and then the Kimley Horn team. We also pull public safety into that if it's an issue that maybe has a public safety element to it. That group are really, they meet once a month and they're analyzing concerns raised in the community. So if that is somebody says, hey, this specific roadway corridor doesn't feel safe, or I've seen a couple accidents here, or my kid walks to school here and it doesn't feel safe, we'll look at those concerns with that team and try and understand what's going on. That team will also look at traffic impacts of new development. So if there's something in a site plan review that is maybe more complex, that team will kind of dig into that and try to understand what's happening there and how it fits into the overall network. And then they're supporting the Vision Zero planning. So we're doing what's called Vision Zero. That means really trying to reduce the number of accidents that have a high level of severity with them, so either fatal or very severe. And we're doing that in partnership with FDOT, since most of the big roads within the city are FDOT roads. They're partnering with us and we're going through those in detail. I was in a meeting this afternoon looking at all of the crash data for the last few years for all of those corridors. And so that'll set us up for some opportunities to get special grant funding through the Safe Streets for All program in the future. So working through that. And then we began working with our consultant on that strategic analysis using streetlight data. So this is, traditionally when we look at transportation, we would look at an individual road and take it kind of piece by piece. We didn't really have the tools available to look at it as a functional system as a whole. So with streetlight data, we've been able to take a holistic look at the entire city, and I just wanted to give you guys some examples of what that looks like. We don't have to go into a ton of detail, but just kind of giving you a high-level overview. So this one is really important. In 2022, when we started this, we couldn't tell you what the average daily traffic was on a road in town unless we had recently measured it. And so now we have a map that links out and we can look at the average traffic volume on any road within the city. It's 2 clicks away. We took a holistic look at changes in volume over time. So we took what the traffic volume on roadways looked like in 2019 and compared it to what it looked like in 2022. And what's really interesting about that is that's not something you could do before, right? If the only way we had to collect data was go out and put tube counters on the road, you can't go back in time and collect that. This actually lets us go back in time and run some comparative analysis, which is really cool. This is a little bit skewed because of COVID, right? If you guys remember in 2020, 2021, a lot of people were working from home, students were at home, so the normal traffic patterns maybe weren't very normal, but it's still insightful and kind of gives us some indication of where we're seeing more pressure on our roadway network. This is another example of the pre-post. I just thought you guys would find this interesting. When we built South Lake Silver Drive, we did the complete street up there. One of the goals was to reduce the speeds on that road. If you've driven it, it feels a little more narrow than it used to. That's by design. And if you look at this graph, the gold line is pre-construction, the blue line is post-construction. And when you get above 30 miles an hour and you're talking about a pedestrian vehicle conflict, the potential for a fatality is much higher. So by reducing that speed, we are making that corridor safer. And so you can see that we've really dropped off the speeds above 30 miles an hour there. But again, this was something that we wouldn't have been able to analyze that if it weren't for that tool, because we were able to look back in time. We couldn't go back in time and collected that data otherwise. So kind of an interesting example. Other things we looked at were congestion and cut through. So you'll see on here the red roads, the orange roads, the yellow roads. No surprises, right? Cypress Gardens Boulevard's congested. Intersection at First Street and Cypress Gardens Boulevard's congested. We're working to fix those things. The blue lines are really interesting. So that is what we identified as cut-through traffic. And there's a handful of those that are complete street projects that we proposed last year, somewhat driven by some of this analysis. So it's helping us to make better decisions and let those decisions be data-driven. Another example of this tool, so we looked at cut-through traffic on 15th Street between Lake Ship and Lake Howard, and we can kind of get an understanding of where that traffic is coming from, how much of it is local traffic, how much of it isn't from the city, and just to understand who the users are of that roadway. This might look familiar. This is in our legislative packet that we used last year with the feds when we applied for a community, what's that called?
National Community Appropriation.
Yeah, Congressional Community Appropriation for North Lake Ship Drive, and that we're carrying forward to the state legislature this year to also help fund that project. But one of the things that this data helped us understand is that North Lake Ship Drive, even though it's a local road, it functions as a regional collector. Without that data, we wouldn't know that. We'd anecdotally be able to say that, hey, there's a lot of people that use that road. If you're coming from Lakeland, you probably come in off Wrecker Highway on North Lake Ship. But without the data, that's just kind of he says, she says. So we're able to put some data behind that, and I think that has helped our congressional appropriation requests. Kind of another interesting example with that, we're able to back that out to census tract data. So we understand what census tracts the people that use that roadway are coming from, which then means we can turn that into demographic data. So we can look at ethnicity of users, we can look at education status, household income, household size, the housing tenure, units in the structure, and vehicle ownership. So that's just kind of extra information, but it's helpful when you're going after grants that are specific to those census blocks, and you can start to compose your narrative in a way that appeals to specific grants. This is another analysis we did very similar. So we looked at downtown Winter Haven to try to understand where the users that come downtown are coming from. What we found is about 2,500 of those users every day come from less than 2 miles away. And so Sean Byers had actually pointed out that if downtown was a school, they wouldn't be provided bus service because it's that close. So that lets us start to ask questions of how else might we get people downtown, right? If there are people that are coming from 1,500, getting in their car, driving 1,500 feet and parking downtown, is there a different way to get them there? Why are they driving? Do we need to make pedestrian enhancements in that area? Just helps us to drive questions like that from a data-driven perspective. This one also, this is looking at truck volume. So we split out the vehicles. We said, show me just the heavy trucks that come down Central Avenue. And what we found is about 300 trucks a day coming down Central Avenue. And this is the type of data that we use to make the recommendation to put a no-through truck signage on Central Avenue a few meetings back. You probably remember that. This is just another picture of that, but kind of farther out, so you can see where those trucks that are coming through Central Avenue are coming from. This is a gateway analysis. So this is looking at, we set up a geofence basically for each gateway around the city on the major roadway networks and asked where are the people that come in through that gateway going to? How many of them are coming to Winter Haven? How many of them are passing through? And what route are they taking to get there? So this kind of just shows you that. And again, don't need to take a ton away from that, except for the fact that it's a piece of information that we understand and we're using to drive our decisions. About 58% of the people that come in off of 17, for instance, are staying in Winter Haven, and about 26% of that traffic is cut through. And you can kind of see that the main route they're going out is through point 6 there, which I believe is off of Highway 92. This is a table. You don't really need to take anything away from this, except that this is kind of the broken down version of that. So if you look at number 7 there, southbound US 27, you can see that any traffic that enters there, it's going out on coming into Thompson Nursery Road. So it's just that we have this information and we're starting to use that to drive our decisions. Now, we also looked at speed. So we looked at the 85th percentile speed for all of the roads in the city and then compared that to the posted speed. And so that has kind of thrown up some areas that we're doing some more investigations into. We're working on some of these right now. So that's just helpful information. Again, we're able to take a look at the whole system. We get calls all the time that, hey, they're speeding on my road, maybe in a neighborhood. This let us look at every road in the city at kind of once and assess that as a system. We began creating new traffic calming guidelines. The guidelines the city's used for the last, I think, probably 20-plus years have remained mostly unchanged. There are some new guidelines out, so we're kind of updating the way that we look at roads to align with some of that. The main goals there are to provide a clear path for residents to be able to make those requests. So if you feel like they're speeding on your roadway, there's a clear avenue to put in a request for it to be examined. Create an equitable database way to try to analyze those corridors, and then encourage behavior change where possible in partnership with the police department. And then from all of that, we are creating a toolbox that lays out what the possibilities are. So if they're speeding on your roadway, this is the type of roadway it is, and here's the type of treatments we could put in place, what the cost associated with those might be, and just provides a lot of clarity to our team and residents on how those are handled. And master planning. So we applied for a technical assistance grant from the Florida Department of Commerce, and that grant would help to fund an analysis of future transportation. So what we're doing is we're looking at what the conditions through 2045 would be and what the conditions in build out of the community would be. And saying, if we're built out, where do we have transportation challenges and how do we get out in front of trying to address those? That's really the goal of this effort. And that grant was awarded. It's on the agenda later this evening, but that'll cover $75,000 of that study, which is about 80% of the total cost. So that was 2023. We got a lot done. I know it was a lot to go through, but just wanted to give you guys an overview so you have some understanding of the different things that we're doing to try to manage traffic. Goals for 2024 are completing that Vision Zero plan and then begin seeking those specialized grants that are tied to it. Completing the transportation master plan, so we have a very clear vision of where we anticipate having traffic impacts in the future and how we get out in front of those. And then completing that traffic calming guideline, and then continuing our transportation management team efforts. So just dealing with those ongoing issues, looking at new development, evaluating ongoing concerns of the community, and then using data to strategically move our transportation management forward. And in 2025, like I said, hopefully beginning to implement some of the recommendations from that transportation master plan. And that may be design, that may be seeking grant funding, but starting to really know what our areas of focus need to be and chasing them down. All right, so I know there was a lot. I was trying to go through it kind of quick. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Tracy.
On some of these studies on speeding, do they ever increase the speed limits rather than lower them as people think will happen?
So I think one of the things that in our traffic calming guidelines that we're working on, and there are some examples within that map I showed, that's one of the questions I think we ask is the speed limit set correctly on that road, or was it arbitrarily set and it at 25 and it's really a roadway that it makes sense to be 35 miles an hour. I think that's one of the first questions we ask is the speed appropriately set?
Anyone else?
How are those speed limits set? Who actually sets those?
Yep. So it depends on the type of roadway, but usually we'll go through the type of roadway, we'll look at the users on it, and then there are some guidelines that kind of direct whether what that speed limit needs to be based on those uses.
Commissioner Dawson, some of the factors that go into that, there's certainly guidance that the Green Book and other guiding tools that the traffic engineers will look at. The geometry and the engineered design of the road has a lot to do with that. Kind of back to Commissioner Mercer's question, I'm trying to recall if I've ever seen a roadway increased in speed in Winter Haven, and I'm not recalling it off the top of my head. I do know probably 15 plus years ago, we had the speed limit lowered on Cypress Gardens Boulevard from Helena Road all the way out to 27. That was at one point a 60 mile an hour road through there. And the other one that I think is noticeable, and this goes back to what I was just saying about geometric design, Dundee Road, State Road 542, is I believe a 35 mile an hour zone from Central Avenue out to Buckeye Loop Road. And a lot of that has to do with the curve around Little Lake Elbert. But I think if you were to look at probably the 85th percentile in there, it's probably 45 or higher. And the 85th percentile is a term we use a lot. MJ and I were just talking about this morning. There's some new guidance with that through the MUTCD and some other the guiding documents that Mr. Roll may be able to speak to, that it really kind of pushes us away from what the 85th percentile speaks to and factors in some additional criteria for determining speeds on roads.
Right, I think the general thought there is that, that 85th percentile speed is only looking at vehicles on the roadway. It doesn't take into account the context of the roadway. It doesn't take into account, if people were driving through downtown very fast, that might not be what we want, right? And so trying to figure out what makes sense there if there's a lot of pedestrians. Just because people are driving fast doesn't mean you want to set the speed limit based on
The
that.
behavior shouldn't drive the
Right.
policy. The policy should drive the behavior.
I just remember that DOT had done a road study on land speeding, and they did increase it. It didn't go down, so
On which road?
I don't remember now. That was it. I just remember being in the meeting, and it was an increase.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of examples around town where that would probably be the case. But I think that is one of the first questions we ask is the speed limit appropriately set? And there's kind of a list of things you run through to answer that question.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Brad.
Would you speak just quickly to traffic calming, because some roads have like really flat tables, others more V. And I remember Mike Kerr saying if you go from point A to point B, they're going to speed in between the tables, and they're going to get from A to B in the same amount of time versus not. Is that still the thinking, or are they coming up with new strategies? I know you mentioned that, so.
Yeah, so one of the things in that traffic calming toolbox is really trying to expand the tools we have available, right? So speed humps are arguably effective. You can only change behavior so much. So I think the other things that we look at, for instance, on South Lake Silver Drive, we showed you that graph where we were able to drop those high-end speeds back into the 30-mile-an-hour range, but there are no speed humps on that road, right? We just changed the way it felt. So there's different approaches you can take, different tools you can implement, and that's what that traffic toolbox is about, is really laying out what are all of those tools that are available to us beyond just a speed hump.
You put them closer together, or is that mandated a certain way? Because
I don't know if that's mandated.
like over around Oleander and stuff, there's like one, and so people fly up to it and stop, fly, go the other way. I've just noticed that, if you had like three of them in there versus one, it might work,
I think William can speak to this if he'd like. I think, generally what we would do today is try to look at, are there other things driving that speed, right? Rather than just trying to put bumps in the road and slow people down, we may try to look at the context of that whole corridor and see what else can be changed to make it feel differently. Want to add to that?
Yeah, there's William Roll, Kimley Horn and Associates, Lakeland, Florida. There's a number of strategies besides speed humps, sometimes just pavement markings. A lot of local streets oftentimes don't even have a center dividing line, but just putting that dividing line kind of defines space a little bit more, and it creates what we call enclosure. In cases where a road was overbuilt, that's where we find ourselves having to do Band-Aids and fixes, and sometimes it's more cost-effective to do it that way. In other cases, it's more so the case of maybe, putting curb lines in or doing other things to adjust the speed. But speed humps, I know myself personally, I take it as a personal challenge. How fast can I go over a speed hump? Because I got a vehicle that will go over and I don't even realize I'm going over it.
I do that with the feedback indicators to see if I can get
See if your speedometer's right.
See if I can get a high score.
Yeah. And doesn't it make you mad when it doesn't match? Yeah. Yeah. So there's a number of strategies. The speed limits came up, and to MJ's point, it used to be the rule was kind of his 85th percentile, and you set it on the basis of that. And now it is a target speed and designing towards the target speed. Most roadways, when they're designed, the design speed was 10 miles per hour faster than what you anticipated posted speed limit. So guess what happens? We perpetually have a problem with people driving faster than the speed limit. So number of different strategies, but that's what we're working with.
Anyone else?
Some of the management methods, I guess, relating to traffic, I guess some cities are utilizing the roundabout method. I'm not sure how effective that may be, or is that something that in the northeast, part of our city, particularly going out of Lucerne, that's kind of a real challenge, with that area there. And I understood that there were some plans that they were looking at. I'm not sure where that may be at this point.
Yeah, roundabouts are incredibly effective from a safety perspective. You reduce the potential impact points dramatically for both pedestrians and vehicles. And all of those impacts also become less severe, right? Because in a roundabout, there's no option really for a T-bone accident. You can sideswipe at best. So from a safety perspective, very, very effective. We're actually building a roundabout on Avenue K right now. We have a couple other small ones around town. And then the DOT does have included in the Lucerne Park Road plans, I believe, for a roundabout at the intersection of Avenue Y and Lucerne Park Road.
Okay.
Yeah, for many of those same reasons. It moves pedestrians and traffic very effectively and safely.
Avenue K Southeast?
Avenue K Northeast, over by Polk, on the way to Polk State College.
Oh.
Yep.
Huh,
Yeah.
okay.
Remember where that big triangular median used to be?
Yeah.
It's a roundabout there now.
Great spot for one.
It's a great spot for
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
it's a good spot.
Kind of a
Okay.
gateway up to the college.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be
that's
nice.
perfect.
Brian?
So the 8th Street over around Oleander, that issue is caused by 16 to 18-year-olds driving to high school in the mornings and in the afternoons. But
I'm guilty as
Confession, the only speeding ticket I ever got in Winter Haven was given by Ricky Bowman about 30 years ago on that very road, right where that speed bump is.
we could give a lot of them there in the morning, especially once you get over the high school and into the school zone area there on the north edge of the high school. But that posed me to stop and think, have we started to merge this data with enforcement? And when would that take place if we haven't?
Yeah, so as part of that traffic calming guidelines is we're starting to pull in folks from PD to be a part of that team. And so really one of the goals there is the behavior change piece. I think I mentioned that in there. And what that really means is, before we go out and just start making physical changes to the roadway, seeing what we can change with enforcement. And that can take various forms, right? That could be feedback signs, putting the trailers out there, maybe doing some quiet counts, going out and actually doing enforcement and measuring that change and seeing if traffic has slowed down from that. So trying to take that approach before we go out and just start, making the most expensive physical changes to the roadway. But yeah, I think there's a lot of coordination happening there. Good question.
Commissioner Yates, I'd also say that the streetlight data that shows us where we have speeding issues is very informative in that typically, you go back 10 years, somebody has a speeding issue in their neighborhood. People are speeding in my neighborhood, and I call it in, and we ask for some enforcement in that area. We're being reactive to the citizen calling in, who most likely under Murphy's Law will be the one that gets pulled over for speeding. Now, when you can look at that streetlight data and see what traffic is flowing at in comparison to what the posted speed is, you can be it's still reactive to a situation, but you're not having to wait until you get a call. You can say, okay, look, we've got people, they're 10 plus miles per hour above the posted speed limit here on this particular road. When Chief Brandon and his motor units are coordinating where to set up for enforcement, they can use that as a basis for making those decisions.
Can you iron that down to the time? So like between 1 and 2,
You
it's the higher speed, so you could actually even target versus having to hire 2 or 3 extra officers to go out with enforcement. You can place this officer at this location between 1 and 2 and
Exactly. Without giving away all the policing strategies, yes.
In
Exactly.
the angler's world, it is a very high-tech fish finder.
and it's not, people have got to start slowing down. It's just, it's crazy, so.
Anyone else? I just was wondering, has it been long enough to see if the heavy truck traffic has been reduced
Not
on
yet.
Central? It's
I think
too early?
that's going to take a little time, yeah, but we're working on that, and it's something that we'll monitor as well the same way.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Thank you, MJ. All right, then we will have developments of note and the minutes, and then comments from the audience. Then we'll be to our second readings. And City Manager, has anything changed?
No changes on any of your second readings, sir.
So are there any questions? I'll go one by one on 9A, 9B, 9C, 9D. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. 10A, City Manager.
I'm going to ask Julie Adams just to give you a quick overview of this, in case you have any questions specific that she can answer.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. This is an assignment agreement for Amendment Number 6 that was approved back in December for Richard's Coffee. Dave Tuttle has decided to sell his business and is wishing to sell to Corrine Hobbs with RHL Corp. And so what this is doing is the city giving permission to assign that amendment of that agreement over to RHL Corp.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
10B,
10B is simply a travel and training request to send Commissioner Dantzler to the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust meetings that will take place in March, June, September, and December, and locations are noticed within your fact sheet.
okay, thank you. 10C,
Eric Labby will present 10C.
Yes, sir, Mayor, Commissioners. You may remember this when you sat as your CRA board meeting. Gosh, I guess that was about a month ago. This is the budget amendment to allocate, to change the amount of money for the outdoor cafe furniture grant program from $70,000 to $140,000 in anticipation of the new furniture grants that will be coming in as a result of the new cafe space that we have constructed. The CRA board approved it because because the CRA board budget is part of the overall city budget. The city commission is also required to take action. This is coming, the money is a line item transfer from the economic development line item, which contained the CRA fund balance, and moving it into the outdoor furniture cafe grant program.
all right, any questions? All right, and 10D is what MJ just presented.
Yeah, 10D will align with a later item that's the master plan work that Kimley Horn will do, and it will align with a resolution we have further down for a Department of Commerce grant.
Okay. And so does 10E as well?
The 10E is the ongoing services to continue to have Kimley Horn work as an extension of our staff when it comes to transportation-related matters.
Okay. All right, resolutions 11A.
So 11A, B, and C, MJ, are you going to present these? These are all go together as one fact sheet. It's just they're three separate resolutions for the grant application process.
Yep, so periodically, the FDOT accepts applications for transportation alternatives, multi-use trail, and regional use trail projects. So these are the complete street type projects we've completed in the previous years. So most recently, South Lake Silver, Avenue C and 2nd Street, and the Avenue K project, which is ongoing, and the South Lake Howard project, which is about to start. So these are three projects that we are applying for that will probably be funded hopefully in years further out. The three main projects are Roselawn Street in Southwest Sheridan. I think there's a map, yep. So this is over on the northwest side of Lake Ship. So this would look at constructing 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the street, as well as short segment on 15th Street, which would give you connectivity up to the railroad tracks, and make traffic calming improvements on Roselawn as well.
Okay.
The next one is West Central Avenue. Thanks. So this would be on the other side of Highway 17, between Highway 17 and Lake Howard. And so same thing, we're looking at adding sidewalks, potentially adding some on-street parking, improving street lighting, potentially some drainage improvements along with that. And everything would be constructed within that 60-foot right-of-way. So we're asking the DOT to help fund that. And then the last project is East Lake Martha Drive. So this is over in the Rotary Park neighborhood, connecting from Rotary Park up towards the soccer complex, which would then tie into the Avenue K project that's ongoing now, and then connect up to the sidewalks that are being built on 7th Street near the Lake Maud Sports Complex. And so in this, we're really just seeking funding from the TPO. So this will go, each of these projects will go, the Multimodal Transportation Advisory Committee supported each of these applications, and they will go to the FDOT for prioritization and ranking.
Any questions?
Just a comment, if I could.
Go ahead.
Mayor Birdsong, if you go back 2 slides there, Katrina. Just want to point out that on this East Lake Martha Drive one, it shows that connection to Rotary Park. Keep in mind that in the Lake Elbert Trail project, we have a connection from Rotary Park out to Lake Elbert Trail. So if this becomes a complete street, that loop really comes all the way from Avenue K down 7th Street, Lake Martha Drive, and over to Lake Elbert. So it just begins to fill in major chunks of missing links in our trail system.
I was going to add that I believe Avenue B and C both benefited from a Safe Routes to School project, and there are sidewalks all the way down both sides of those roads that would tie in as well.
I'm just curious, MJ, time frame for these?
These are probably a little ways out. That gets a little bit out of our hands when we're asking the DOT for funding, but I think 26 is the earliest we would see some of that funding to maybe start design work, but, could be out into 2030. We're just now, so South Lake Howard, I believe the application for the South Lake Howard project that we're starting within the next month, I believe the application for that went in like 5 or 6 years ago for perspective.
Okay, but these will be submitted
Yes.
now?
Yep. Pending approval of the City Commission on Monday night.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Then number 11D is the performance bond.
So this may look somewhat familiar to you. Several meetings back, we had brought for you a reduction in the performance bond for the Peace Creek Reserve subdivision. If you could go forward, Katrina, for me. There you go. So everything, you see County Road 653 on your, my mouse isn't working here, where South Point Elementary is, the area right across from South Point. That portion of the performance bond was released several meetings ago, and now we're dealing with the eastern portion of Peace Creek Reserve. And this will drop their performance bond from $3,981,271 to $472,127.92. Pretty straightforward. Eric, do you have any comments beyond that?
Only that it authorizes you to release the original performance bond and adopt the new one.
Accept.
Okay. Any questions? All right. 11E.
The city attorney is going to give comments on this one this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mayor, Commission. This is a resolution that has been requested by the developer of the affordable housing project on the approximate 5.41 acre tract of land that is generally located south of Martin Luther King Boulevard and west of First Street North and north of Avenue S. It's Blue Winter Haven LLC. You may recall that's one of the affordable housing projects. They have asked for and are seeking this under the provisions of 376.80 of the Florida statutes, which allows for brownfield and or green reuse areas to be established by resolution of our city commission, you all. And this is to help facilitate their ongoing redevelopment of the project. They have discovered during the construction that as a result of this being a historical old orange grove from like 1928 to 1980, that there was some arsenic and dihedron soil contaminations that were above the Florida SCTL, the soil contamination cleanup levels. They have taken steps or are taking steps, as they've noted in their application, to remediate that properly and in conformance with all the rules, but as a result, it's costing them a little more. So they're seeking this designation so that they can then become eligible for various FDEP and or other grants that are available, or monetary opportunities that are available to properties that are designated with this statutory designation. This is subject to their public hearing, and they have had a meeting on the site earlier last year, and there will be 2 advertised public hearings in front of this body, Monday, January 22nd, and then again on February 12th. So anyone from the public that is interested may come and speak. but you'll see it before you on the screen, the outline in blue, the area that will be designated as such. And my understanding is that staff is supportive of this request and that it is consistent with the requirements and the criteria that are in the statute, 376.80, as I mentioned, and it is being requested by the property owner. And I believe it's attached to the resolution, that's part of your agenda, their request that came in back in February of 2023. It was a rather lengthy application. I commend you to read it if you desire. The fact sheet, goes through it, and it seems appropriate to move forward with this item.
What did you say was on the property?
They had an environmental report, phase one.
I know that, but
And
I'm
it
just
was
saying,
an old
I'm trying
orange
to,
grove, apparently.
I'm just trying to determine how would it have gotten there?
Well, what happens, what they call this, Mayor, is a business environmental risk, a BER, in the environmental examination context. And these things evolve and develop as a result of agricultural use that may be put on a land for many, many years. And in this case, based on the application they submitted, the historical use of an orange grove on this site was documented from 1928 to 1980. That's a pretty long time. They would have done, pest control, they would have done spraying of the groves, they would have done various things that were perfectly legal and appropriate, but as a result, happened to, implicate the soils. And so as a result, although it was not there's a difference between a business environmental risk versus some type of recognized environmental contaminant. But in any event, that's why, because they used it as a grove for many, many years.
When they do this, one would think that when they do the soil testing, that's done earlier, isn't it? Why is this a kind of a seeming almost after the fact?
It is done earlier. You would certainly think it's done prior to their acquisition of the property, and I think they did become aware of it, certainly. But this was an application that was submitted back in February of 2023, keep in mind. It's just now coming forward now. And they have, as part of their pro forma, they have included a much higher, well, not much, based on their application or their petition, they've suggested they've spent more on the development of the property than they had originally anticipated in pro formas.
Anyone else? All right, 11F.
Yep, so this is in line with what I mentioned earlier. So this effort will involve substantial data collection and analysis of the current and future transportation network. So both as the roadways exist today and forecasted through 2045, and then projected build out of the city. So this is just the agreement to receive those grant dollars from the Department of Commerce.
Okay, thanks. All right, then we will have a first reading. T. Michaels, will you?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Eric to go over this. This is a change that addresses marine structures or boat docks, and it's pretty, normal. I mean, it's not a massive change. It deals with the roof availability that can go on those. So, Eric, you want to take that one, please?
Right. So, Mayor, Commissioners, we last addressed marine structures in our code back in October of 2019. So it's been a little while. During that update back in 2019, we updated the length and the surface area maximums for marine structures, or docks, in simpler terms. They were updated, and maximum roof area square footages were created. At that time, we had adopted that the maximum roof area for a marine structure would be 500 square feet. What we've come to understand is that when you're constructing a dock, that's enough to cover one slip, 500 square feet. It's not enough to cover two slips. Of course, you can park two boats alongside of a dock. This came to our attention from some dock builders and some residents who, of course, wanted to protect their marine investments from the Florida sun. So we did a little research and we're able to, what we're proposing is to increase the roof structure for single-family residential marine structures from 500 square feet to 750 square feet. The dock builders and the residents that we've spoken to have said that that would be sufficient to cover 2 slips. And then in the commercial, non-single-family residential marine structures would increase from 625 to 1,000 square feet. No other changes are proposed with this ordinance.
So it really just deals with how much roof can you put over a dock to protect the boats?
Eric, is this consistent with what the county does, or do you know?
The county actually doesn't limit the roof structure area with their docks. They defer to, I guess it would be DEP and their rules for the lakes.
What's DEP? Are we going to be consistent with
I
them?
think it's a maximum of 1,000. So in our non-residential, we're consistent, and our residential, we're a little bit lower than I think what the maximum is allowable by DEP.
So theoretically, county residents could build a 3-slip if they wanted to, and city residents can only build a 2-slip?
I think yes, in theory, yes. It's my understanding 750 is enough to cover 2. I think in much of what we do, and MJ, perhaps you and your natural resources team can talk a little better to this than I can, but it doesn't sound like a big difference between 750 square feet and 1,000 square feet, but with all of the docks that we do have on our lakes, that square footage adds up quite a bit, and when you're covering that amount of the lake with roof structures, you may start to see some deterioration of lake quality and invasive species, maybe based on some of that shading that happens over much of the lake.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, and I don't have a dog in the hunt, I don't care, but I'm asking, why would we not make it consistent with DEP and make it 1,000, so no matter what, everybody's treated the same? I'm just trying to figure out why we would have an ordinance different than the county residents, because if you live on Lake Partridge or whatever, you can build 1,000, and I don't know, I'm just sitting there, I'm just thinking out loud, why would we not want it to be consistent with whatever else does?
Well, I don't know that everybody else does that. I do know that that's what the county does in there, and I think DEP does that. It does, if just because you apply for that doesn't mean that you get 1,000 square feet every time. The DEP can restrict you to something less. I think that in our code, in our conversation with dock builders and residents, they all sort of agreed that this would be a sufficient square footage for them.
Okay, I'm just curious.
When you get up to those higher numbers too, you start getting into submerged land leases through the state. And so that deters a lot of individuals from adding on square footage to their docks because they don't want that added expense year over year on a submerged land lease.
And we still have to give dock permits, right? And if it's bigger, if it's up to 750, we're going to give them a permit.
Correct.
And DEP doesn't necessarily give them a permit up to 1,000. They look at each one.
They look at each one. They look at the docks. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anyone else? All right. New business?
So, Mayor and Commissioners, following our discussion last Monday, in the presentation from the Salvation Army I had prepared, actually met with them via phone twice last week and had prepared for you a fact sheet in response to a letter that they had submitted. However, I wanted to share with you that this afternoon at 7 after 4, I received a letter or an email from the Salvation Army stating that they would like to withdraw their proposal for providing funds from the city to the shelter that they had sent over last week, the letter that was included within my fact sheet. That they are currently in communication with the divisional headquarters, but do not feel like they have all the information needed for these upcoming meetings with the city, speaking of this evening and Monday. And that, just that they were withdrawing that proposal. I contacted Lieutenant Daniel Jones just prior to walking in here to ask for some clarification on that. I don't know that I have a whole lot of clarification And I don't know that I'm not suggesting he was withholding anything, I don't know that he had a whole lot of clarification, but it sounds to me like they may be moving forward with the closing of that shelter. They are withdrawing their application from the city to provide additional funding or consider additional funding, or their request to do so. I did ask that he keep me very much informed with what their activities would be going forward. If this was perhaps an opportunity for the divisional office to continue forward with that shelter, that was certainly something that I would be interested in hearing more about, but at this point, he really couldn't provide me a whole lot of information. If it was going to completely cease, or if it was going to perhaps transition under some other provider to provide those services, he was not clear. But their request for what was outlined in the fact sheet has been withdrawn. I wish I had more information I could share with you at this time, but that was the bulk of a 20-minute conversation
Do you
today.
remember, when are they closing it down? And was there a date?
February 12th.
The 12th.
February 12th.
February 12th, that's what I thought was coming up, okay.
So we had prepared for you some guidance on that for the commission to have discussion. I think it's a moot point at this stage of the game. If it does come back, I think my recommendations to you would be the same with respect to considering certain parameters for that to happen. And if the commission is so inclined to fund, an agency to operate that shelter, where those funds would come from. But I don't know that it's worthy of any discussion at this point without a formal request on the floor.
I assume that their coming here was just to announce that it is closing. That was primarily the objective.
Commissioner Dawson, I would say that you're probably correct, and I think that yes, we're going to close this shelter. I'm speaking hypothetically from the podium here, and because we have no funding source to offset this shortfall, and then with the commission's interest in perhaps helping bridge that, okay, let's take a look at it, but it sounds like that's not of interest at this point. I don't know if that means that that's not what was presented, the 125,000 number, if that's not a sufficient number to do so. I couldn't really get my arms around that this evening.
As my granddaddy said, that was a foregone conclusion.
Very well could have been.
So you don't think you're going to hear?
I asked that he keep me apprised of what's happening with it. If it is going to close definitively, to let me know. And as soon as I hear something more from the Salvation Army, I will enlighten the entire commission on that. If there's some opportunity perhaps that's transitioning to someone else to operate, I don't know if that's, a plausible idea or not, but whatever it is, I'll make sure that the city commission's informed.
Well, the impact of that is, based on just the data that you have here, that, from 1958 and 1982, they've been running the women and children, and that stopping, unless there's something else that will, address those needs. I had a lady in church Sunday who had been a resident there and stayed there. She might have ran out her time, and so she's kind of moving from one place to the other.
Well, in their letter, they state, in 5 years, over almost 1,300 individuals coming through that facility, and just over 28,000 days of lodging. I mean, that's significant, and I think that what Lieutenant Jones had noted in his letter of how to transition that back to purely a women's shelter and women and children's shelter with longer term sheltering services and some wraparound services. But again, for whatever reason, the request for funding from the city to make that happen has been withdrawn by them.
Can we, via a nod this evening of the commission, to just give a response as the
entire city commission remains supportive of maintaining X, Y, and Z.
I think that that's a known consensus,
We need
and
to put
certainly
that in
you all can
writing.
give a nod of consensus on that. You're not taking any official action other than to say, yes, you are supportive of having that shelter operate, and I can return that message to them so that they know that support is there. How that plays out, if it were to come back as a financial request, depends upon what the request is.
Right, we can make that decision at that time, but I just want the Tampa folks to understand how important the facility is to the city of Winter Haven.
Well, to the east part of the county. There's not one in Haines City or Lake Wales or anywhere.
Yeah, the negative impact that it's going to have, based on the numbers you just said, that there's going to be an impact. We're going to know that. That is a resource that has been available that will not be available. And so battered women, I've been chaplain for the PD, women who have been in that condition, that situation, that's been a resource that's been available. That not being there is definitely going to have a negative impact in our community. Right now, when we have people who present with various challenges with homelessness, the only resource that we have been able to really tap into has been the shelter for women, but then Lakeland is the nearest place that we've been able to direct them to. So,
If you don't mind me asking, is it the problem the men or is it the problem something else? The shelter, if it's just women and children, it's good, but when you mix men in, that's when the problem becomes?
I don't think they ever had, in the years that I've been here, they've never had men involved with that, because mainly it's a result of women, it's like anything else in most cultures of society, women, children, you always you figure a man can try to figure out how to make it work or do something.
Yeah.
But with women and children, a woman with a child, is the most vulnerable, and doing what you can to try to assist and help those individuals.
But that facility never allowed men, or did it start?
It may have at one time, but for according to the data here since 1982, I know I've been here since 92, and it's been that way, and so it's
Just women.
My understanding is that more recently, they engaged with Baycare to provide initially 4, now it's been reduced to 2 of their 24 beds for behavioral health patients that have been released, and that would include men, and that is why they no longer allow children.
That's your problem right there, I'm sure. If you all of a sudden have a women's facility and you got 2 men in there and they might be unstable,
Well, I
no
think
wonder
that
they're having problems.
I think the bigger issue, it's not so much the occupancy of the shelter as it is the financial issues of the shelter.
Right. It's the money.
It's the money.
I get it.
But I think the dynamics were that, the understanding that if you tried to mix men and women in that situation with children, that probably would not be a good situation. So I think that was the rationale,
I'm trying to figure out why they would want to close it though, because this is right in the Salvation Army's wheelhouse to keep this kind of service. You know what I mean? This charitable, that's what they do. And I'm just trying to figure out I can't figure out why they want to close it in the first place, but now I kind of get it. I mean, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it.
To be continued.
And so is that the Tampa?
Their district headquarters, I understand it, Mayor, are in Tampa.
Okay.
So to be continued, and
Yeah.
when the sequel is ready, I'll bring it back.
Okay. Then we have the city commission liaison reports and city attorney, city manager.
One thing, if I could, I'm going to ask for the benefit of the commission and whoever may be watching this evening, for Katrina to give you a run-through of our itinerary for the next 3 days, most of which is travel tomorrow and return travel on Friday, but our agenda in Tallahassee for Thursday.
Good evening. You all have your blue binders, those of you that are going to Tallahassee, so if you open that up, you have this right in the very front. But tomorrow, on the 17th, we'll just be traveling to Tallahassee and checking in at the hotel. Thursday is a busy day of meetings for us. We'll start at 8 a.m. in the hotel dining room. We have a room reserved, and we'll have breakfast with Representative Killebrew. Following that, Eric Draper will give us a presentation on Sun Trail, an update on that, and we'll also have a discussion around Resilient Florida and water quality with David Rathke. We'll then walk over to the Florida League of Cities offices at 11 and meet with them. We'll get a briefing on their advocacy efforts, where they are with various bills, and it'll help us as we go into conversations that afternoon. We will join the rest of the Polk County group for a drop-in lunch anytime between 11:30 and 1. That'll be a sandwich buffet that they're serving there. And then we'll head over to the Senate building at 1 o'clock to meet with Senator Burton, followed by a meeting with Representative Tomko. We will also spend some time dropping into the offices of Senator Albritton, Representative Bell, and Representative Kennedy to give them some information and meet with their staff as they're available, and potentially go to some afternoon sessions if there's any bills of interest that we're tracking that are there, and wrapping up the day with the Polk County Day reception at 5. And then Friday is a travel home day.
And Mayor and Commissioners, to add to that, I believe in your packet you should have a copy of our legislative agenda for this week. Mayor, I know you had asked me about this earlier today. There's more than a handful. There's several dozen bills which we are tracking that it is my intent to, when the opportunities allow them, to communicate with our Polk County delegate on these items, everything from utility service fund transfers for general government to extending or expanding homestead exemptions to increasing the cap on sovereign immunity to a number of other things. Mayor, Commissioner Dancer, there's an item that speaks to TDC funds that we're tracking closely on how those may get further legislated through this session. But we did provide you a copy of a front and back single page that speaks to 4 key things that we are hoping to address while we're there. The lake ship infrastructure improvements. This goes hand in hand with a federal grant that MJ spoke of earlier. This is a state level appropriation that is being sponsored by Representative Killebrew in the House and Senator Burton in the Senate in the amount of $1.12 million towards our lake ship project. That will be married up with a $2 million congressional community appropriation from Congressman Franklin's office, should it be awarded. The other second item is the offering our continued support and advocacy for the Old Dixie Trail Sun Trail grant application. This came before you a few months back. This is a grant application that is actually being submitted or was submitted by Polk County, and with support from the municipalities of Lake Alfred and Auburndale. The City of Winter Haven offered a letter of support with that and technical advice and guidance as it ties into our trail system, and this would ultimately give us a connection to the coast-to-coast Florida trail system. The third item is the 2024-2025 Resilient Florida Funding Grant. This is a grant that was applied for through our water department. It has the potential of providing to the City of Winter Haven grant funds totaling $6,375,000 to go towards the Bradco Farms project. This is within the Florida Resilience Plan, and we are pursuing we're advocating that they fund that at the level of $100 million. We are the 15th project on that list, and should that be funded at that level, our funds would come to Winter Haven. And that $100 million funding level is consistent with what's been funded there in recent years. And then the fourth item that we are carrying specifically is Senate Bill 451 and House Bill 451. Katrina, if you could verify that those numbers do match identical on that, just something that caught my eye. That is the Heartland Headwaters continual annual funding for that. As you know, the Heartland Headwaters Sustainability Act is money that comes back to the PRWC to implement projects of the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. Since that act was adopted initially, The first year, it was just the adoption of the act. Then after that, it was getting some funding each year. It has been funded at the highest level of $20 million 2 years ago. I think it was less than that last year, if I'm not mistaken. This is an ongoing push to make that a perpetual funding within the state budget so that we're not going back every year on behalf of PRWC and asking, okay, this is what the projects are this year, can we fund that? It allows us to do a lot more long-range planning, both from a capital infrastructure standpoint and a financial investment standpoint. And again, I think we've got it looks like maybe a typo in that last item. We'll clean that up and make sure you have fresh copies of that as we begin our meetings on Thursday. There's also a reception tomorrow evening that you'll have some information on that is tied back to the PRWC.
Yes, and does everybody have that?
Yeah, it's within their schedules, yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
The meeting, Commissioner Yates, you had asked about the Ridge League of Cities as having a helping sponsor or pull together a meeting with the Florida League of Cities for the various municipalities. Not all of those municipalities would traditionally meet with the league. We had already scheduled an individual meeting with the league that we were going to hold to because our schedule in the morning does not accommodate the Ridge League's gathering. But I think all the same, you'll get even more details on the items that you truly have interest in.
Yes, Tricia.
On Friday, I was reading that the utilities the committee meeting will be held on Friday, this Friday. I don't know if it's on House Bill 777 and the companion Senate on that, or if it is the other one that is.
Can you pull it up? MJ's got his
I don't know when
his
I
war
don't know if I
board
have
here.
the committee meeting on here, though.
Yeah.
When that would be.
I just looked online this morning, and it is going to be on Friday.
Is that on the transfer or the surcharge? Or both?
I think it was on the surcharge.
Okay. We will, we'll watch for that, and if in talking with the league on Thursday, they may advise about having someone stay on to offer comments on that, and if so, then we'll make that
Here,
happen.
it's going to be pretty packed
Yeah.
with all the utilities people there.
I got two things if I can bring, because I won't be there with you guys, so y'all have fun, bring home the bacon, do all the stuff, but I'm just going to mention two things to you. Anybody you can talk to from the league about this financial disclosure, Form 6, hammer them about it, because this is preemption to the nth degree. If you look it up in the phone book or in the dictionary, this is preemption. And if any of you guys have an interest in being a hometown hero, this is how you do it. You go up there and you start telling them that this shotgun approach, I mean, I've been on this commission 11 years, Birdsong's been on over 20. How many lobbyists have called on you? I haven't had one lobbyist call on me. Colleen Burton made a comment in the paper that, oh, just fill out the form, we're all the same. Well, we're not the same. Everybody in Tallahassee is political. 95% of the people at the local level is not political. We're just doing this to help. And they take the shotgun approach with people, in Miami, I'm sure every commissioner gets called on lobbyists. Well, we don't get that. And they have taken this shotgun approach in this preemption, and they force this on us. And I'm just telling you, they need to hear from us. And if I were up there, I'd be singing this. This is what I'd be singing with. And if anybody you can find from this Florida League, you start saying these words like preemption, this is not right, the shotgun approach. I know they're trying to get the big cities. You'll be a hometown hero, because that's what they're looking for, is that kind of talk. And it's going to happen. Sooner or later, they're going to come after our CRAs. And it's that shotgun approach. Our CRA works great. We're accountable for it. We account for the money. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. In big cities with strong mayors, yeah, they use that CRA money for other things. We don't do that. So you can't lump us in with some other people. They need to be a little more subjective on how they pass these laws, and they need to come up with some sort of a exemption, or bigger cities versus small cities or something. But I'm not hopeful that something will happen, but maybe something will happen if we enough people to talk about it. So I'm just suggesting that, that's all I'm saying. If I were there, I'd be singing that, and you do it privately off to the side with these folks, and of course, do your agenda that T is prepared for you, but harp on that, because what they did is just the epitome of a preemption, and they shouldn't do that. And the last thing, T, I just joined the AHAC committee. For
Affordable Housing Advocacy.
From Tracy. I was hoping you could ask Diane to send me the last year's worth of minutes so I can read what's been going on
Certainly.
there. And also if there's a schedule of meetings so I can get them on my calendar, because I don't know if they put that out or not. I just don't want to I just like to keep my calendar as tight as I can keep it, so.
I will do so, and I don't believe they meet monthly. I don't think it's that frequently. It's either bi-monthly or quarterly. I'll also tell you that we have Eric's new assistant director who will be coming on is expert in affordable housing and be able to offer some further insights, and I'm sure we'll have some involvement with that committee as well. So looking forward to have you on that. We'll get you the
I
minutes.
just want to get up to speed, whatever, just like for the last year or two, the minutes. I'm sure Diane probably has them somewhere, and just send them to me. I didn't want to call her directly, so I wanted you to do it for me. That's it for me.
All right.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Just need to wish a happy birthday to Miss Katrina Hill.
Woo-hoo!
29.
And Holden.
We got our trip to
City.
Tallahassee as a birthday gift.
Deputy City Manager, you have anything?
No.
City Clerk?
No, sir.
Emergency matters not received for the agenda. Motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.